letting our other guests in from the waiting room as we go along. Welcome, everyone. My name is Christy Simon. I'm the president and CEO of the Central Maryland Chamber. Thanks so much for joining us this morning for our webinar on SEO and social media. We're looking forward to a great program. The Chamber has been having a series of educational events that have been recorded, and they're accessible for free right on our website, which is www.centralmarylandchamber.org. While you're there, you can also sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media for more information on all the great resources we offer, as well as our upcoming events. So if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to add your contact information in the chat box. Following the event, we will share that with the attendees so you can stay in touch. Also, if you have questions throughout the program, you can feel free to add them in the chat, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the event. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today's presentation. Andrew Prasad is the CEO of AE2 Creative. Andrew has worked in the web development, digital marketing, and creative services space for over 10 years and has worked with a large variety of clients, including small businesses, nonprofit associations, and corporations. He has helped them build their brands, form and/or reform their digital presence, and increase audience interaction and conversion. We also have Jalen Mock here with us today, who's the social media and branding director. Jalen has worked in the social media and graphic design field for nearly 10 years and has helped various nonprofits, local businesses, and startup companies launch, update, and maintain their social media platforms. Under his management, Jalen has seen clients' social media platforms increase exponentially and has helped businesses launch their digital presence and reach their full online potential. And just a little more about their company. AE2 Creative specializes in developing and elevating businesses through web design, development, digital marketing, and creative services. They have many years of experience in the industry working with all types of businesses, from small mom and pop shops to large corporations and government associations. They value local businesses and feel strongly about supporting the community around them. AE2 Creative is your web marketing and creative partner that grows with you, not simply an outsourced service provider. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here. I know Jalen is as well. We consider this really an exciting opportunity to present. I will say right at the beginning, I've been personally benefited by getting to know a lot of people on this call, as well as other chamber members in the past, 6 or 8 months or so. So honestly, thank you for welcoming myself and AE2 so enthusiastically. The overall goal today is essentially to educate on some of the basics and best SEO and social media practices, particularly that have come out of some of the consults that we've done. So these are real issues that we see on a daily basis as we're talking to our clients, as we're talking to new clients, and doing other presentations. So a lot of people know that they're supposed to do something, but they don't know why. So we'll basically aim to give a little context as to why things are the way they are in the space, as well as provide some steps that you can take immediately to improve your digital presence. So I will share my screen because I have a fancy PowerPoint that I made. Make sure I can, there we go. So anyways, we can jump straight in. Christy did an awesome job giving us a little background on the company, but just to quickly recap, we specialize in web design development, digital marketing, and creative services. The main thing I want to talk about really briefly with our business is that we really like to be a partner instead of an outsourced service. And one of the reasons that is the case is because we get to know your business. We get to know you, the character and the personality of your business. So we approach things from a slightly different perspective than most other digital marketing companies in that respect. So, oh man, let me go here. So first off, the initial thing that I typically go over with clients is you have to know your marketing goals. And each business's goals and marketing plans are going to be drastically different. Each audience is going to be different. The areas that they spend money and time in are going to be different. So knowing those goals, and part of that comes out of, just this brainstorming process that we like to walk our clients through. But there are things that you can do on your own if you don't know what those goals are, that can help develop that process. One of the initial things that I would say is look at the competitors in your industry. So you look at not just the most successful ones across multiple industry, but look at your competitors, the people who you are being put up against. And so I like to say, even for our business, we have a list of local and non-local. So essentially what we do is we take a look at who is around us, who our direct competitors are in our geographical area. But because our industry spans, across state lines, we can have a client in California. And so we're not only being compared to the people immediately around us, but also people, on the other side of the country, potentially. Evaluate what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and what you can do better. And part of this is going to come up a few times here during the presentation, because part of that evaluation process is really what's going to determine the value that you get out of whatever you put in. And so another thing is putting KPIs in place. So these are key performance indicators. And this is extremely important because it's how you're tracking your campaigns and or your strategies. So, there are things, and which we'll talk about this next, it's not just how many people hit your site. We'll talk about how to kind of implement things on the back end, which is one of my personal things that I'm passionate about, because in the industry, I see people putting out money and they don't know how to track it on the back end of whether it's effective. So another thing that would come to mind as far as a term would be your return on investment. How do you calculate that? Your return on investment is not just how many people hit your website. Your return on investment is, I spent this much, I got this many hits. Out of that many hits, I have this many conversions to a client. And so we'll talk about that in the next slide. And the other thing is figuring out how to implement some of these performance indicators into your existing structure, not just reinventing structure around it. We're big on saying, okay, you have things in place, so how can we make that work within your existing structure, versus feeling like you have to strip everything away about who you are and how you do business to put things in place. Basically, a simple analogy that I like to give is I was working with a dentist office, and they had a form that they handed to every single person. And I said, well, an easy way to track your return on investment is put a little section in there of how did you find us? And then on the other side, after they become a client and you send them some kind of follow-up of, please review us on Google. Simple things like that, where they already have a structure in place, but kind of beefing it up on the back end. That way they can get some trackable data and metrics to base some of their future campaigns on. So KPIs, key performance indicators, they are not things like your ranking, your traffic, your hits, your clicks, etc. Those are pieces of it. However, they don't mean anything unless you have the other side of it, which is, like I said, those conversion indicators. You have X amount that you put into this produced X amount that's realistically dollars and cents in your business's bank account. That's the important piece that a lot of people miss is, I got you, and this is the last bullet point on this, is I got you 1,000 hits. Anybody can do that, right? Not anybody can come in and help you facilitate processes that help you determine whether or not it's relevant to your business, and tracking those conversions of taking place from just these 1,000 hits to site customers. And so the example I give here is, I could get you 1,000 hits to your site every month. That's easy. I could optimize your SEO for pet sitting when really, you're selling handmade goods. You can drive customers to your site that don't even want to go to your site. So out of that 1,000, only 10 contact you for more information, that's, that 1% return, versus we say, okay, well, we did a little more targeted SEO strategy, or there are things that you put in place for a more targeted audience, and you may have 40 people contact you for more information because what is on there is more relevant. So those are the kind of metrics that you need to make sure you look at, so that you can determine whether or not what you're doing is relevant. The back end processes are just as important as the effort you put into, revamping content or determining those goals. So SEO, what is it? This is kind of the ground level base explanation that I give people. SEO stands for search engine optimization. It is increasing traffic to your site through organic, which means non-paid search engine results. I feel like most people are familiar with the sponsored ads that are in the top part of Google. If you search for something, that top, like however many, 5 or 6 that you see is typically the pay-per-click advertisements where people are paying for that placement. And what I find interesting is I like to poll clients and I say, typically what I find is that people are either in need of an emergency and they click the first thing that they find, or they're actually looking for, because they subconsciously understand that the people at the top paid to be there. So they scroll past those and click on the organic search results. So it's interesting to see from a client perspective what they typically do. And the majority that I have personally found actually scroll past those unless they are looking for, if they have a pipe burst or something, then they're just like, give me the first person that I can find. So, and I have a slide specifically about paid advertisements and those benefits. However, specifically about SEO, it's the bottom, it starts at the bottom of those paid advertisements where it starts to transition there. The important thing to realize is that it's as much about the users searching as it is the actual search engines, because what you're doing is you're analyzing your keywords that match your business's services, characteristics, things like that, and figuring out what users are searching for and optimizing your content so that when Google or other search engines read your site, they determine that it's relevant for those searches. Essentially, one of the reasons why SEO is even a thing is because search engine used to look solely at meta tags. And what happened was people would spam the meta tags on their website. So you would be searching for something, click on a site, and it would be completely about something else. So essentially what developed was, and I think this is actually in there. Yeah, here we go. So it's in the crawling stage. They developed robots. They're called spiders, and they comb through the internet looking at code and content for websites. And what ends up happening on the back end is once they find that the content, it's collated and organized. And so that's called indexing. So if any of you have stood up a website, you're probably familiar with the process of submitting your site to be crawled by Google. It's submitting it for indexing. And what that does is allows the search engine to determine if your website is relevant or not, depending on the search being performed by the user and the content. So it's just as much about the user as developing your content concisely and in an organized fashion so that the search engines can actually dig through it. So one thing to note is SEO ethics. So there's white hat and black hat SEO. White hat, best practices, long play, legitimate strategies. Black hat strategies, this algorithm hack can increase your traffic 1,000% or 100 times overnight. Try it now before Google shuts it down. I see these advertisements all the time. Good SEO campaigns, whether or not you choose a company to do them for you, or if you decide to implement them yourself, they take time to gain traction. What you actually end up seeing is when you implement an SEO campaign, typically you see a dip in your traffic because Google does not inherently trust that you are legitimate because of things like this. So what you'll actually see is a dip at the beginning. If you pay attention to your Google Analytics, you'll implement SEO purposed campaigns and you'll see a dip in traffic before it starts to gain traction and swing up the other way. It's because there's a lot of these practices and they have to go and actually determine that what you're putting out there is relevant, what you're putting out there is legitimate and ethical. So they're putting all of these procedures in place, not just with the search algorithms, but with almost initially penalizing you off the bat. So it's something to think about, is that this is the long play piece of your digital marketing would be SEO. Not to jump too far ahead, but that is where some of the paid advertisements come into play, of kind of a quick entry, which would be kind of overcoming that dip with some paid advertisements. One, it's easy to get brand recognition that way. People don't know your brand and aren't searching for you. But the other piece is we kind of use that at the same time, so that as that dip is going down for the organic search results, you also have a drive in traffic from the actual paid advertisements. So let's get into some basics here. Google Search Console, Google Analytics, specifically Google Analytics. If you do not have Google Analytics on your site, please email me, because you need to have Google Analytics on your website. It is probably the most important tool that you can have when determining any kind of website metrics, performing any kind of analysis, anything. The reason being, you can track hits to your website, you can track their progress through the site, you can see where they're spending their time. It's an absolute gold mine, not just for marketers, but for businesses in general. If you don't have it, I cannot stress enough how much you need to make sure you have Google Analytics on your site, because it is the most valuable source of information that you can have. Links. Make sure each page has links to other pages on your site. There should be no dead ends. Even if this is as simple as having a call to action at the bottom of every page, even contact pages. You can say, have you checked out our services? Have you checked out our portfolio? Things like that. There should always be links between pages so that the search engines can figure out how your different pages talk to each other. Backlinks, they're another really important piece. Other sites should link to your sites. We just built a website for a client who owns a gym, and one of the things that he chose to do was he has an affiliate section on his website, and his other affiliates have the same thing, where he will link to their website because they provide affiliate services and they work really well together. However, for SEO purposes, that's amazing, because what you end up with, which I put in here, is the more backlinks you have from long-standing and trusted sites, the better chances you have of being ranked higher. Essentially, what that brings in is a little bit of that ethics piece, where a site will link to your site. That is a sign that there's something relevant there and valuable there, and especially if that site has a good SEO ranking, that's a big benefit. Really quickly noting here, these basics are essentially putting you at that zero starting point. And that's something that if you're not implementing these basics, you're getting a negative score. You're being penalized by Google. And that's an important piece to note, because they pretty much set the bar at some of these. This is not by any means an extensive list of all of the metrics that they track. However, these are some of the most important ones that we have seen, where, hey, do you have links going through other pages? No? Okay, well, let's implement those, because we want to make sure that you are ready for a campaign should you choose to implement one. They'll really impact your search engine rankings if some of this stuff is not done. The speed of the site, optimize your images. If you're putting images into your site that are like 12 megabytes, they're the full size images, you're just scaling them down, you're really impacting your site's load time there, which impacts your SEO ranking capability. Be intentional with all the media choices that you use. They add weight to your site's load time. Again, it'll negatively impact you. Very closely linked to that, mobile optimization. We've all heard it. More and more users are accessing their sites via a mobile device, and you need to make sure that your site performs well there or you will get penalized. That ties really heavily with the image size piece, because if you have extremely large images, people aren't loading sites on their phones from the fastest Wi-Fi networks all the time. They might be loading on edge if they're in spotty coverage area. They might be loading on 3G, not the fastest 5G networks. So when you optimize for that, typically on our mobile sites, we'll actually pare down some of the images and simplify the content so that users are able to quickly find what they are looking for. But that piece, more than ever, has dramatically increased, especially in the past year. Really everything web-based has increased over the last year, which has been really scary for a lot of business owners. And that's why when we were talking to Christy, we were like, this is probably one of the best ways to approach this, because these are real world issues that we still find. So especially these basics and the things that Jalen's going to go into in a few minutes and under the social media side, they're really going to be able to be implemented right now and be able to impact your SEO scores and your social media interactions. Second one, URLs. Short, concise URLs work best. You want to include keywords in your URLs, which we'll get to keywords in a moment as well. So I have two examples here. One, www.blank.com/SEO is a great tool for improving your business rank on Google, versus blank.com/improve SEO ranking with dashes in between. Google is going to be able to read the second URL and more quickly determine what that page is about. And because of that, is going to rank higher than the other one. The last bullet point on this page is make sure you're setting the URL for your pages. Part of it is kind of shocking, but I still see sites that actually have an auto-populated URL or an incorrectly formatted URL. And it typically is some kind of alphanumeric code. Even WordPress has a setting for that you have to change for your blog so that it actually changes to what you title the page. So make sure you're going through and you make sure that your URLs are concise, they're short, and they have your keywords in them, because all of that impacts your SEO score. These are kind of getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty here, but titles, you want to make sure that you use a keyword in your titles. Descriptions, make sure you fill out your descriptions. I see a lot of websites that I work on for clients where they did not fill out their descriptions. They did not put titles in. The same thing with H tags. If you're hand coding, or if you have the ability to put keywords in under those, or any other tags just in general, you want to make sure all of that is filled out, because that is the raw code that Google is going to be looking at. You want to make sure that and in WordPress and things like that, even in Wix sites or Squarespace, they have all of these little fields that you can fill out. A lot of people still don't fill them out. It is really, really important that you do, because like I said, this is the actual nuts and bolts of what they're looking through, and they are determining whether or not you are doing what they set as kind of their baseline. File names and alt text. These are really important so that it knows what these images are and knows if they're relevant to the content on the page. A lot of images are just shot on an iPhone. The file name is never adjusted, and it's just stuck on a site somewhere. It might look fine in your browser. However, the other side of things is you need to make sure that when one of these search engines is crawling your site, it doesn't have a real person on the other side. So they aren't looking and saying, oh, they're talking about a kitchen renovation. This is a picture of a kitchen. They're seeing pick1232.jpg and saying, well, that doesn't quite match with this, versus if this is renovated kitchen cabinets.jpg. That makes a lot more sense. So continuing on with the naming piece, your menus, they should have concise names, and they should include your hierarchy and submenus. You don't just want 1,000 menu options. Also, if you have a ton of menu options, consider doing a secondary menu. A lot of times, and again, mentioning the client who owns the gym that we just did a website for, he has a secondary menu on his, I believe his services, his affiliates, and his resources page, because he has a lot of content that he wanted on those pages, but we wanted to make it easy to, for users to, as far as accessibility goes. The other thing that this does is, transitioning into this next one, it helps the search engines determine your sitemap. And what this is you've all seen what those wireframes are. That's essentially what the search engine is doing, is saying, this is the hierarchy, this is the structure of the site, determining whether or not that's, one, relevant, two, organized, and three, whether it's going to be intuitive for somebody to follow through. One of the big things that I push in the site development stage is, do we have a site flow? How are we going to be sending clients through the site? And one of the benefits to doing that is, inherently in that, you kind of get those cross links between your pages, because you're always going to, at the bottom of every page, have a direction for somebody to go. The idea is you kind of end up making it a never-ending loop of your website by enticing them to click on something else, which improves your analytics, you get more views, and improves your SEO. And the idea being, it doesn't seem like you're trying to keep them in your website, because you're providing content that is valuable, which we'll get into in a second here. The last point on this, we see these fields left blank often. All of the things on these last 3 slides, please check your sites and make sure, because these are really some of the base level things that you can do to improve. So let's quickly talk about keyword research. The way I like to think of this is, you have a couple of different buckets, right? They're the pillars of your organization, of your business, your services. In a lot of cases, you have these different buckets that you fill with what you would search for. So if I had a kitchen renovation bucket, right, I would probably put, okay, how to redo my countertops, and like I said, it ends up with your services put in there as well. So redoing your cabinet faces, whatever it may be, painting your kitchen cabinets, replacing appliances, which, DIY people have tons and tons of these, and we'll see this example later too. Think about what you would search for. That's kind of the brainstorming phase. Like I said, you think of it as buckets, and you put the keywords and the phrases in there. Next, what you can do is, there are keyword solutions. So Google Keyword Planner is an excellent one. However, it is a little bit of a climb as far as getting used to it for some people. There are other, what I would call freemium. They have a free plan up to a certain point per day, or up to a certain level of interaction. One of those, the best one, is probably SEMrush. Another good one is Ubersuggest. There's one called Keyword Tool. All of those can help in that keyword research. And what you do is, you end up taking those terms and flowing them into your text, so that when it reads your content on your site, it will see those keywords and be able to determine the content around them, if that is providing legitimate information that is relevant to the users. Another one is Google Trends. You can see what people are searching for. So I would encourage you, the PowerPoint's going to be provided after the fact. Take a look at some of these. Specifically, the Google Trends is very interesting to look at if you just want to do a little bit of research without really signing up for anything or making any large decisions as far as that goes. The other thing is competitor research. This came up earlier. Take a look at what they're doing. Take a look at what they could be doing better and what you could be doing better. Look at how they're structuring their services, how they're wording things. You know, a lot of people who want to implement that geographical piece, they will weave the city that they're based around or the area that they serve into their copy. Look at the people who are doing it well, because, and it's not unethical in terms of, I'm not saying go copy their content. I'm saying look at what they're implementing as far as a strategy goes. And the last thing I wanted to touch on for the SEO portion of this is blogs. And I have a lot of clients who I ask, I'm like, okay, so you have a blog. Are you updating it often? Why are you doing it? And the answer tends to be, somebody told me that I was supposed to do this. And you need a little bit of context as to why. So the 3 questions that I ask is what you're creating and putting out share worthy? Is this relevant? And is it valuable? Is it share worthy really determines the quality. Are you putting out something that you can tell that you put effort into, or are you just posting because you need to post because another blog told you that it's good for your SEO? Because the thing is, people will know and the search engines will know. I'm not saying you need to have, you know, a copywriter come in and post, but you also need to make sure that what you're providing is something that is well put together. You need to make sure that it's relevant, make sure that it's not outdated information, make sure that it's something that users are going to want to read and interact with. And then, is it valuable? Is it something that there will be an inherent sense of value where people will want to come back on their own free will, not off of a search? Is it valuable in the sense that they'll sign up for your RSS feed or your email updates or things like that? When you start to think about the impact of blogs and SEO, start with those 3 questions, because they will determine a lot of the rest of the process for you. There are things called evergreen topics. They are relevant and valuable for long-term traffic. And so if you think about the kitchen example that we're using on this slide, how to renovate your kitchen is going to be good for longer than that month, longer for that year. I'm a DIYer, you know, I guess I'm a little past that now in my renovation expertise or whatever. But when I was starting out renovating kitchens, I was looking at articles that were years old. They weren't produced in 2020. I don't say how to renovate your kitchen in 2020. I just say how to renovate your kitchen. So topics like that will net a lot of views long term. The other thing, topic clusters. Think about the difference between renovating a kitchen in one article. It's a lot of information that's not easy to digest. And this goes into a little bit of a marketing plan and kind of breaking things out over a calendar. Instead, do an intro on the updating the kitchen piece. Do one episode, if you will, or one post on just the counters, on the cabinets, on the appliances, then do an overview at the end. The idea is you're providing value, but you're also saying, hey, you liked this. This was share worthy. This was relevant. You found value in this. Subscribe so you make sure that you see the next thing I post that's share worthy, that's relevant, that's valuable. And one of the reasons I put this right before the social media side is there's a lot of bleed over between your blog and your social media as far as the principles of making sure it's share worthy, relevant, and valuable, which we'll jump in on in just a second. One thing to take into mind is writing to the audience, not just to the experts. I see a lot of blogs that are full of technical jargon that people won't necessarily understand, or they're overcomplicating something because they want to sound smarter than they are, or just use the terms that they used paying for their college degree. I went to college and I can use all those technical terms. I use them maybe once a week. And when I use them, it's talking to one of my business partners. It's not talking to my clients most of the time. So when you're writing things, make sure that you're communicating effectively to the people who not only that you want reading, but that are reading, especially when you start looking at analytics and seeing what people are searching for when they hit your page. That tells you a lot about the verbiage that you should be using, as well as the keywords. And the last thing on this one is URLs. The structure here is just as important as the rest of your pages, which I guess that linked in, yeah, there it is. So two separate URLs here, structured the same way, except the end gives the differentiation of what that actual post is about. Again, even WordPress, all of these other sites, you're going to need to make sure that what you're putting in is coming across this way. Even still, I have my WordPress settings set to allow it to populate like this, but I still have to edit all the time to make sure that whenever I post something for us, for a client, whatever it is, I make sure that I change that URL. So like I said, there is a lot of bleed over between the blogs and the social media, which is why these are back to back, as far as, like I said, that content. But really think about those three questions. Is it share worthy? Is it relevant? And is it valuable? Because especially as he starts to go into the social media side, that's going to be an insanely important piece of how you're driving interactions and how you are reaching the clients that you want to reach. So, Jalen.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. So we're going to dive right in on the social media side of things. I'm going to try to cover a lot in a little bit of time because I want to leave some time at the end for you to ask any questions that you might have. But we're basically just going to cover the fundamentals and like the foundations for social media. Hopefully everyone in here, it's to some extent, to some level, is on social media, whether it's for you personally, but hopefully even for your business or your company or whatever it is that you're here for. Because I think, to say the least, if 2020 taught us anything, it's the importance of having an online presence. I mean, look at, we're virtually joining right now. But the thing with social media is a lot of times it can be intimidating because people might not understand a lot about it, or they might know enough to manage their own content, or by their own, I mean your personal page, like my Facebook, my Instagram, because I can do whatever I want with my stuff. But when you're representing a brand or a business or a company or something outside of yourself, it can be a little intimidating sometimes. So my hope is, with just a few explanations and covering a couple topics, you can leave here with a little bit of an understanding on how to improve your social media. So real quick, we're going to cover the bases, just your social media platforms, where you're going to be posting, the audience and why this is so important, the content, what you'll be posting, scheduling, and management, which is important because it's how you can improve. So, Prasad, I have control of this. Yeah, there we go. All right, so diving in, platforms where you're going to post. This is not just a matter of, okay, well, let me just go any and everywhere. If you want to tackle that many platforms, by all means, go for it. But something very important with this is knowing the platforms you're going to and why you're going there. For example, these are some of your most popular ones: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. They all have different functions. They all have different demographic. They all have different users, from age to everything. What they're involved in, what they're invested in, what they care about. And so based on not only your audience, but also what you have to offer, is going to impact where you want to set up your social media. For example, Instagram is huge with millennials and anyone younger, teenagers, young adults, even older adults, but basically anyone under maybe 40. There are people that are over 40 that have Instagram, but the majority of users you'll find under 40 on Instagram. So if you find that what you're trying to reach is maybe that younger side, then Instagram would be pretty popular for you to use. The content also works best with Instagram is things that are visually stimulating, photography, videography, graphics, cohesive themes to go along with your content to help your Instagram stand out. These are things that matter. You should, like I said, you should prioritize Instagram if your audience is maybe under 40, or if you run anything like lifestyle or even e-commerce, photography or videography businesses, or again, anything that's visually stimulating. Even places like a food company or a restaurant. There's a food truck that opened up in my area, and I found it through social media, and I was like, that looks really good, I want it. And me and my girlfriend went and found this place and went and got some because it looked really appealing. So things like that are good to keep in mind when you're thinking about where you want to go. Facebook, this is a lot to do with maybe some older people, which is where a lot of you probably are going to want to gear, because this is people with the money. Like a lot of teenagers and even some young adults, they're coming up in the world, they're paying off their college, but a lot of the adults are the ones where they can have some investment in your business or your brand. So your primary audience with places like Facebook is going to be above 30. There are people below 30 that use Facebook, but the majority of the audience is above 30. And regardless if your brand stands to benefit from sharing news or engaging with short videos or graphics or visually appealing content, based on the audience that you're trying to connect with, you might want to consider having a presence on Facebook, because there's a lot to gain from that. And then Twitter, again, there's different users there, different reasons. Twitter is mainly text based. So if you're blogging content or things where you have stuff to say and type it out, Twitter's more so. You can do visual things on Twitter, but that's not its primary usage, its primary platform. One thing with Twitter is there's not as many users active compared to Facebook and Instagram, but the ones that are active on there are very active, meaning they're diehard Twitter fans. Like they tweet all day, they love it. They when they wake up in the morning, they're tweeting. When they go to sleep, they're tweeting. There's also YouTube. I know if you're thinking, well, I'm not a vlogger or I do a bunch of video content. If your business could benefit from doing anything like tutorials or walkthroughs, visually driven instructional content, product reviews, interviews, these are things that you could benefit from YouTube. And then I'm sure we're all familiar with LinkedIn because it's the professional networking and career development social network platform. This is where you can display your resume, search for jobs, enhance your reputation professionally, and just mainly networking. That's a huge benefit with LinkedIn. But the biggest thing with this, again, is, and this is just with social media in general, wherever you decide to go, to whatever extent, the importance is that you do something and go there, because that's where the people are. Imagine you had the opportunity to set up a display of your business in the middle of the grocery store, like this huge, the entrance is right there, and they say, here, do a big display of your business right here. We don't mind. Most people are going to want to take a chance of that. Why? Because everyone goes to the grocery store at some point in their life, unless we're all at this point virtual and, we have them shipped to our homes, which I do sometimes because I'm lazy, but it's also just because I don't want to go outside. So that being said, that's exactly what social media does. It takes what you have to offer and it puts it where people are at. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, not because I necessarily am trying to find that food truck, but because my friends are there, my family's there, I'm already there. And because that food truck had a presence on social media, I saw it and I wanted something from it, and they got my business, and now I go there regularly. Thank you for that. It's great. Now my bank account's hurting. Not really, it's not that bad. But yeah, so that's the importance of social media, is it takes what you have to offer and it goes to where the people are. So moving on, why I want this, can you do the slide per slide? It keeps like letting me do it and not letting me. Thank you. Your audience, this is why you're posting. You're presenting your company, your brand, your business to current or potential clients. And this is something to keep in mind. This is why knowing your audience is so important. What is it that they are consuming? What is it they want? What is it that is appealing to them? And then again, knowing the competition, what are they doing right? This is what Prasad mentioned earlier, Andrew mentioned earlier about knowing what your competition is doing, not so you can copy them, but so you can see they're doing something successful. I forget, it was someone I was talking to about business, and they said they went to visit someone else who was their competitor, and they were saying it because that competitor was seeing a lot of growth, and they weren't doing it because they're like, I'm selling out and I'm going to join them because I'm quitting. They're doing it because like they're doing something right. I need to know what it is. And that's why knowing your area on social media, seeing what those other users and those other pages are doing and seeing how it's successful. The first thing I do anytime someone is asking me to help them with social media stuff, no matter their business brand, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a religious organization, if it's whatever, the first thing I do is I'm like, okay, what do you have? All right. And I go and I take knowing what they are and I go find a bunch of other pages that are having something similar or the same thing. If you're selling a certain type of product, if it's beauty supplies, I go and find some very popular beauty supplies. I'm like, what are you doing? how do you promote? What does your brand look like? How are you handling social media? What is your presence like? Because you're doing something successful, and we can take that and adapt it to do what we need to do for our brand, for our business, for our company. So that's the why this matters, is you're trying to reach the audience, and you're trying to engage the audience, trying to connect with the audience. So knowing the audience for your current and potential clients, knowing what they like to see, something small, and we'll get to this when we get to content, but something small is like, there's a lot of interaction where someone repost a lot of their consumer stuff, like this person did this review, or this person just used this product, and they share that. Why? Because I would love to see my face on someone else's social media and be like, oh yeah, they love my product, and so on and so forth. And there's something to gain from that, because now that consumer wants more from me, because they're like, wow, they care about what I had to say, they shared what I had, what my feedback was. So knowing your audience, engaging your audience, that is the why posting is so important. And again, knowing the competition. Moving on to content, what you post. This is a variety of things. I will say, you don't want to do something I've seen a lot of people do, is they find one thing as far as content, and they just do that one thing over and 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 over again. Just as annoying as it was for me to say over and over and over again that many times, that's how annoying it can be when you're on someone's social media and it's the same thing over and over and over again. Which is why we take a variety of things, a variety of content, and mix it together to keep our audience engaged and keep our audience happy. Things like products and services, what it is you want to sell. If it's a physical thing, put it on there, show it to people, let them know this is what we have to offer, this is what we want you to buy. If it's a service, this is what we've done, this is how we do it. Showing those things, and also not just doing, if I'm selling this Yeti, which I'm not because it's not mine, but if I'm selling this Yeti, I don't want to just post just this Yeti white box photo over and over and over and over and over again. But I can take this Yeti and I can put it in someone's hand, and I can get a different type of promo photo, and then I can have it set up on some rocks on a hiking trail. I can take it and change the content or the product differently. And the same thing with services, change the way you present your services. But that's something you want to put out there. Another thing, and this is great with creating interaction, is giveaways. The two main things you'll see with that is, again, it drives interaction, which is huge with social media platforms, is engaging with your audience. But also, it's a great way to promote, because most giveaways say something along the lines of tag 5 people and share this to your story, or share this to your page and follow us. You'll see your numbers grow. I just did a campaign with this with a company I work with, and I think they had 400 followers from one of these campaigns, because it was just the product. Everyone wanted to buy it. Everyone wanted a piece of it, and they wanted it for free. Everyone loves free stuff. And so if you do a giveaway, and all they have to do is to enter to win is enter for a chance to win, I guess I should say, is do these few things, then they're going to want to jump on that and do it as much as possible. And it's a free way to promote your company or your brand. Sales and promotions, deals on products and services that you want people to purchase and invest in. Again, what it is that you want to sell, these type of things, making sure you're promoting them and getting them out there. And also, this is huge depending on what it is you have to offer. Event promotion. A lot of times people do before event promotion where they say one thing about what's coming up, and then that's basically it. They might say something else a month later, and then the event's here, or during, they might do something, if nothing at all, and then after, a brief recap. But approaching this the right way is huge, because it's literally the way I've viewed it a lot of times with events I've done with people for social media campaigns, is the before is helping it just gain that height, that excitement that you want. And so if I just present something like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing in a couple weeks, you should join, we'll be talking about this, and that's all they see about it, there's going to be some people that are interested, that engage. But if I really get this out there, maybe even tease a little bit with a sample of the person that's talking, a spotlight video, or a countdown. Countdowns are huge, because like, look at New Year's Eve, 10, 9, 8, everyone's getting excited because it's getting down to 0. So even doing countdowns, saying we're 20 days away from this event, if you still have time to register. Also giving them that sense of urgency. If you don't register now, you might not be able to later. So before promote kind of just helps get that build up and excitement ready. And then during, depending on what it is you're presenting, during might not be possible. But there, if it's an event and you're able to do something live, get some photography, some videography teams in there, capture something to promote during the event. And then my main thing with after too is, one, you want to remind people what they experienced to maybe follow up with something, or to make that next step that they were thinking about doing at the event, but they haven't done it. But then they're seeing this reminder after and like, oh yeah, I need to do that. The other huge thing with after is it lets people know that weren't there what they missed out on, and it makes them not want to miss out on it again. And that's something I've seen a lot of with proper after event promotions, is they realize, I should have been there, that happened, I missed out on that, and I want to be a part of it. When is this happening again? Because I'm writing it down now so I don't miss out on it. So event promotions is huge. And again, making sure you're tackling that before, during, and after. Scheduling when you post, and I'm almost done. This is also huge. Do you post just because you know you're supposed to, or do you post about valuable and relevant topics? People can always tell when you're posting just because you have to. When it's just, I'm doing this filler post, you can tell by whether it's the language in the caption or the quality of the work. And this is why scheduling is important, because, to be completely honest, posting daily is honestly really beneficial because of the algorithms on social media nowadays. There was a point in time, and I'm not going to talk long about this, but there was a point in time in which social media was chronologically based. If I wanted Andrew to see my post, and I have a feeling Andrew's getting on at 12 p.m. around lunchtime, I'm going to post my post at 11:59, and it's most likely he's going to see that, because it's chronologically based. But that's no longer the case. It's based on the algorithms that social media has set up, where they deem, is your content related to Andrew? Does he care about what you have to say? Does he care about what you have to show? And if he does, then we'll let him see this when he gets on social media. I had it the other day. There's a page I follow. They posted something 2 days before, and it just showed up on my feed. I think it was yesterday. It was like 2 days late. I just now saw it because the algorithm said they'll care about this content now. And so that being said, that's why posting as much as possible is very important, because it raises your chances of something coming across your social media followers feed. But you also want to keep a balance between quality and consistency. Do we want a lot of quantity? Sure. But if it's going to be at the expense of poor quality, then no. So find a way that you can be consistent with what you're doing, meaning have a schedule, have your Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine, have something where they know they're going to be here this day and I can see something from them because that's what they do consistently. But also finding out what you can maintain a decent quality at, and keeping it there. Don't go to every day if your quality is going to be horrible and people aren't going to want to watch it, what you have to offer, or see the post you have to say because the quality is no good. But find a balance between what you can do at a consistent level and keeping the quality decent, and not neglecting the quality in a hope to have more available. And so going from scheduling leads us into management on how you can improve, but also how do you schedule out content and make sure you keep that routine and that consistency. And this is where content schedulers are super helpful. Sprout Social, Hootsuite, Buffer, these are a couple examples of places where you can pay. It does require financial investment. There are some free tools out there, but most of the ones that I've seen or experienced or knew of people experienced, there were bad reviews because it's free. To be completely honest, a lot of people want to jump on something because it's free. But there's a reason that it's free. And so you're going to get what you pay for, so to speak. And so these offer a way to schedule out your content weeks, and sometimes, depending on what they offer, most of them months in advance. So you could take a week to just gather a bunch of content and then just schedule it out in advance and get it ready. So that way the content's there. Another thing that these tools offer are ways to interact with your platforms. Is there's a huge like, let's say you decided to do Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's a lot of follow-up to have to go back to each and one of those and then say, okay, did anyone ask me any questions on Facebook? Oh, did anyone retweet on Twitter? Oh, did someone DM me on Instagram? When these tools take all of that and put it in one location, so you can look at one feed and say, oh, this person just retweeted me on Twitter. Oh, this person asked me a question on Instagram, and you can see it all on one consistent feed, which is super helpful. And another big tool with these things is the analytics. This allows you to see what people have to offer, what they're interested in. I guess you say it shows. You can look at a post and say, oh wow, this got this much interaction, but this one only got this much interaction, and it lets you check out the social media analytics of what people like from you, what people don't like, what made people follow you more, what made people unfollow you, and allows you to track your success. Again, a thing to remember is there's going to come a point in time in which you have to financially invest in your social media, especially if you want to see it grow, because there's, whether it's paying someone to do the work for you or paying one of these tools, Sprout Social or Hootsuite, to get the services they made available, or whatever the case may be, there comes a point in time in which you will have to see financial investment. And even, and Prasad, if you want to jump in on this, and even with advertising is super huge and helpful when it comes to social media and marketing in general, because it again, taking, like I said, with that grocery store analogy, where it takes what you have to offer and puts it where the people are, this just almost guarantees that even more, because it puts it in an ad, and it takes cookies from people's search engines and says, oh, this is something they're interested in, let's put this on their page and show them what's available. Prasad, did you want to talk about the paid advertising with SEO and stuff?
Yeah. So the other side to all of this, like I mentioned briefly earlier, is that there is a paid side, and from the SEO perspective, it helps overcome that dip, but also it really, really is beneficial on the social media side. And I know we're running a little behind on time, so I'll kind of quickly buzz through these. One, it offers that quick entry that I talked about earlier. Two, it gives you an increase of traffic that you might not necessarily get until your brand is known. Three, which this is probably one of my biggest points, is that it has the ability to target an audience based on their demographics. This kind of puts a little more power in your hands, as opposed to being dependent on an algorithm to decide. It says, we have a user base, pick your preferred demographic items, and whether it be age, other things, and it pushes it out, and it kind of bypasses those algorithms because you're paying them for that ability to bypass the algorithms. The other benefit to it is that you pick the budget. You get to determine for a pay-per-click campaign, how much am I going to spend per day? If you only have $1, $5 per day, depending on what the keyword competition is on those, you might just pay. It's essentially paying for a hotter, lead than just a cold call, because somebody's interested in your service. They've already clicked on your business. Make sure that what you're providing them is relevant there. And the other thing that it can do is it does provide insights that are helpful in SEO, other strategies and campaigns. And so what you end up with at the end of the day is a lot of data. That's the hope from SEO, social media, your advertisements that you've paid for. You end up with this huge, massive pool of data. And like Jalen was saying, in the software that kind of integrates all of this together, that's where you're going to find that it kind of organizes all of this. And to the other side, this is an awful lot for somebody who is the main person running their business to do, which is why companies like AE2 exist, where we can say, we'll come in and we'll partner with you. And that's not in a sales pitchy way. That's just the fact of the matter of, I'm doing all of this stuff. I don't have time to, look at all of these analytics, determine where my next steps are going to be, strategies, planning things out, stuff like that. So it is doable, but you do have to sink some time into it to really get that back end down well. However, the idea of today was we give you some steps that you can take immediately, some things that you can think about. First of all, the takeaways, like know your marketing goals, know what you're trying to do, know your audience, and I think also you could say your competition here. A little effort goes a long way. That you don't have to write an expansive article for every blog post. You can make something that's palatable, that's easy to digest, that's applicable. Provide that valuable. Like I said, is it share worthy? Is it relevant? Is it valuable? Some of these best practices, please implement them now, because if you have not, then you are getting penalized. Track some of those KPIs, the key performance indicators, and use that to determine your return on investment. Like I said, we're big on the back end piece of helping you track some of those, as far as determining whether or not what you're doing is relevant in the long run to your business. Because the idea is it's a constantly revolving cycle of, you put money and effort in, you gain a bigger audience each time, which then feeds the fact that you can use some of that and advertise more. So I do hope this was helpful. One of the last things I did want to say was that we love to meet new people. We love to do discovery calls. Please reach out. We would love to do one-on-ones, get to know everybody better, get to know your business better. Again, we prefer to be partners, not just an outsourced service. I made the comment to Christy and Kim in kind of like the pre-call piece, where I was like, we don't like to be sales pitchy. We really are about that kind of business to business connection. We want to learn about your business. As far as if you choose to let us assist with any of your SEO or website or any kind of strategies here, we'll be as hands-on or as hands-off, whatever your business requires. And then I do have some contact information here as well. I'll drop mine in the chat below. But very seriously, thank you so much. Oops, I just dropped my pen. Thank you so much. I do consider it really an exciting opportunity. Christy, I don't know if we do have time for a few questions. I know I got one that we could answer probably pretty quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I know some of our friends may need to log off if they have other appointments, but I think we can certainly hang out for a couple minutes and take some questions.
Okay. I was going to say I got one from Teresa Connolly, and Jalen, you can probably take this one. It says, if you were to pick one social media and you are a B2B, which platform would you use? And then if you are a B2C, which one would you choose?
So again, this goes towards your audience. For business to business, it depends. I mean, LinkedIn could be helpful, but also Facebook, just because that's where majority of people are. But it's more so when you're talking about selling something social media wise or virtually, business to business versus business to consumer, the biggest part isn't necessarily where you're presenting or where you're publishing or what platform you're using, but more so what it is you're presenting. In other words, how you communicate. For example, a simple way to remember it is business to consumer focusing on benefits and solving problems, whereas business to business is focusing on more so the money side, the resources, the time. So more so how you're communicating what it is you're trying to, like, you're not going to present same way to business to consumer as you would business to business. You're going to talk business to business about the strategy, about the logic, about what they can get out of this relationship. Whereas business to consumer, you're focused on the product. You're trying to engage with their feelings. You want them to say, I need this thing in my life. And you're focusing more so on you're appealing to their emotions or trying to solve the problems in their life with what it is you have to offer. So Facebook is super helpful. Like I said, so is LinkedIn. But I think more so with going between business to business and business to consumer, you're going to want to focus on how you present the language that you're using. Because again, and whatever it is, whoever it is you're trying to engage with, that also determines what platform you use. Business to business is not specifically, like I said, LinkedIn, because it's mainly professionals and about business and the work world. But Facebook is just where most of your people are, especially adults. If anyone has one social media platform, almost always it's going to be Facebook. So if you picked one, I would say Facebook. But again, it's just about how you communicate whatever it is you're trying to communicate that'll benefit.
Andrew, I have a question. Lee Crumbaugh.
Yes, sir.
Actually, they're related questions. I write posts on my blog, and I want to be getting traffic on LinkedIn. I understand that LinkedIn much prefers that I create a LinkedIn story. So how do I ultimately drive people to my website if I'm in the LinkedIn world with my post? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, and actually that's an issue across the board, more so recently than it was before, because including on Facebook, for instance, when you post a link, they want you to keep people engaged on their platform, and they actually will start penalizing you should you start pushing people to that. So that's kind of where a little bit of time management comes into play with things like schedulers. If you have multiple platforms, where you can more easily manage what you're posting on each one. The idea is cross-platform content in principle, but in application, you can slightly adjust per platform. So what I would say is you still want to keep the blog because you need that for SEO purposes. You need to keep putting content there. However, in terms of driving, you need to make sure that the content that you're posting is not all pushing. There needs to be some native, if you can use that word, like native content to that specific social media platform, so that you can have stuff that will keep readers and users engaged on that platform. Jalen, you can speak a little bit to that too, but that would be my main comment, is figure out a way where you can have the same content, but also at some points push to the website, whether it is, for one, like giveaways are huge. The one thing I will say is you don't get docked doing that in paid advertising. You can do whatever you want in paid advertising. You can send them directly to your site. That's kind of just the caveat here of it's kind of open season as far as that goes, but they are really cracking down lately as far as linking out, and it's something we've seen become more and more of an issue. And the answer is you really just have to get creative. You have to make
Same question with video and YouTube. YouTube, you're trying to maintain a YouTube channel,
Yep.
but you're saying you really need to have that native to the whatever platform
and they'll do the exact same thing
on.
with that, where before you could post that YouTube link on your Facebook and it was fine. Now Facebook is like, hey, we have our own native video player that we've integrated better. So what you should notice is when you're posting 1, links, and 2, videos or other content that's linking out, it will actually show up differently in your post than if you post that natively within the social media platform. So I understand the principle of why they're doing it. However, unfortunately, it does make it difficult for literally everyone on the platform, because you really have to sink more time into it in order to get the benefits. But what I will say the benefit is that I think at the end of the day, you'll get more reach from those individual avenues if you put that time in. So it's one of those, a little parentheses lot of effort goes a long way, because what you'll start to see is as you do more on those platforms, you'll see more of an audience, more interactions, more of an increase of views. So even though you may not be pushing people directly to your site, they will go there to learn more about you. Again, to subscribe to your email updates. One of the things, and this is kind of just a random thought from a lot of conversations I've had, is that this has become a pretty normal thing to see on social media of, hey, we're here, we're doing this, or I'm going to give you a couple quick tips. As much as each of these platforms has really made it more difficult for creators, COVID has done a great service to creators, because now your selfie camera, you see it on professional paid advertisements. It's commonplace. So where before you might have needed a big video production, you can use your camera. Now, the other side of that, when I quote clients on something, is now that this is standard, if you can provide the same valuable information and take the quality up a notch, that makes you even more noticed. So there's a ton of different ways to get creative. That's the long answer to a short question, but there's a ton of different ways. And one of the reasons why we didn't go so deep into some of the theories behind it and the strategies is because it's really dependent on not just the business, but the audience that you're interacting with and the audience that you're trying to garner and the audience that you're not interacting with, but that is still potential.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Great presentation, Jalen, Andrew. You guys really know your stuff. I've been in the space, the digital marketing space for 10 years. And
Sure.
when I come to some of these meetings, you know, you never know what you're going to get, whether it's a new person, and you can kind of see through if they know their stuff. And after being in the industry for over 10 years, you guys really know your stuff. And probably for a lot of people on the call right now, your head's spinning, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's impossible to do all these things and do them right by yourself and try to figure it out and stay on top of it. You need a team like these guys to help you either coach you or implement some of these solutions. This space changes almost daily. It's hard for us in the space to keep up with it, much less business owners. So I just want to say great job, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I was hoping that there'd be a couple people who were familiar with it that could kind of provide a little bit of insight as well. So that's really good to hear.
Thanks, Stephen. I know we had a question come in from Christy. Christy, did you want to ask your question live?
Hey, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. You're going to laugh. I'm joining from the car. That's where the world is these days, right? So thank you so much. Yeah, I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure I really understood what you said. So I wanted to ask you to circle back to the geography piece. I think a lot of people on this call cover a wide geographical area if you're in a service field. So we're in IT services, and you know our customer base is anywhere from DC to Bel Air to White Marsh to Annapolis to Owings Mills and a little bit north of that. So that's a pretty big geography, and it covers a lot of what people would call small towns and city names.
Sure. So essentially, I would say and real quick, I know a couple people are jumping off. Thank you so much. The geographical piece is really, really a big deal. One of the things I will say is make sure that your Google My Business is updated. So that's a really large piece of it as far as showing up in certain results, because if you can set your geographical area in Google. So that's a whole nother side to it almost that we didn't really get into, was that whole piece of setting up your business, the power of reviews, all of that plays all into this, because realistically on the back end of all of these search engines, it's like I said, it's this collation of data. And so what you can do is really make sure that you narrow down that target market, make sure that you're using. So if you do any keyword research, and for someone like a question like this, I'd love to do a one-on-one, because there's specific stuff you can search for of what people in your particular area are looking for. I mean, a simple one would be IT services in whatever that is. Make sure you flow that verbiage in. When you're advertising, if you do paid advertising, make sure that you're not just picking demographic data, but you're also doing geographical data. Make sure that you're targeting that in your content on your website. Make sure you're flowing that in. I mean, I have seen sites where they're like serving areas in Upper Marlboro, Annapolis, Baltimore, Washington, DC, all of this stuff. And it ends up getting back to the point of, and I don't know if I actually made this point, but with meta tags, websites were getting spammed with them. So random sites were getting brought up. So what Google will do is they'll read and they'll determine if you're sitting there and you're just naming every city versus saying we serve the greater Baltimore, Annapolis area or something like that, where you can put keywords in there that will cause you to come up for things. And like I said, the Google My Business is probably a large part of that, particularly because if you search for something, businesses will come up on the side and you'll be able to view there as well as the actual organic links. Like I said, there's a lot more in depth, and it's not really a short answer. So I'd love to, if you want to, I think I have your contact in there. Maybe I'll shoot you a direct message. I think that one's probably easier answered one-on-one because there's so many determining factors of it, particularly with what your web presence looks like right now, if that makes sense.
Great, great. I appreciate your quick feedback, and I understand that it might be a more personalized and complicated conversation. So thank you for at least letting me know what I have to deal with.
Sure.
Thanks.
It doesn't mean it's necessarily a high climb. There might be some easy things that you could implement, but just in terms of, you know, not taking 20 minutes necessarily to make sure that we understand the, you know, the context of the question. I would love to do a one-on-one just to get to know a little more context better. Seriously.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure.
I know this is such a big topic that we'd like to consider maybe having a part 2. And in the advertising, we can encourage guests to watch this first session so we can kind of pick up where we left off. I think that would be a great idea. We could certainly go on all day. You guys are so knowledgeable and there's just so much to cover. It's hard to do in an hour. So thank you both so much for all of this great information. And thanks to all of our guests for joining us. I do encourage each of you to connect with other chamber members today and follow each other on social media. I think that would be a great way to support each other, you know, immediately following the event. So we do hope you'll tune into our future webinars. Our schedule can be found right on our website, which is centralmarylandchamber.org. Just a few I'll touch on real quick. On the 25th, we'll host our Membership 101 session where you can learn all about the benefits of membership. And on that same day, we'll actually have our Future of Fort Meade event with our special guest, Fort Meade Garrison Commander, Colonel Christopher Nyland at 10 a.m. Then on March 3rd, we'll have our next event in our Adapting Smartly series about boosting employee morale. And March 9th is our next virtual networking mixer. We'll have some fun games and door prizes planned for that event. Lastly, on March 10th is our next small business seminar on the Platinum Rule and increasing sales. That will be presented by Patrick Lee, president of Chesapeake Think Tank. If you have not joined the chamber yet, we would love to have you as a new member. We are growing and we have plans for a great year ahead. We'd love to have you on the team. So feel free to connect with me following the event and we'll get you more information. We will share a link to the video of the session with you later today. So thanks again to Andrew, Jalen, and the whole team at AE2 for a great presentation. I do encourage you to reach out to them to schedule a one-on-one if you have further questions about your business, social media, and SEO efforts. Thanks again for being here, everyone. Have a great day.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.